Hey guys, MutantCowboy here, and we need to have a serious talk about what is going on with skills in this game. I'm not just talking about the vast majority of them being underpowered either. I am more annoyed with how poorly the mod system works, and how it feels like the unique features of any skill are muddled to stifle diversity and any actual fun with building. I'm going to take a look at some of the positive changes they could make, but first I want to cover how the devs have been approaching skill builds for some time now. Because the system seems to be built on some of the more poor skill choices they made, and what they did going back to the first game, especially with 1.8 and the brutal way they treated skill builds, you can clearly see it in the gestures and expressions from the Red Storm crew when they talked about the upcoming Tactician and Alpha Bridge classifieds 2 years ago. Just watch Terry as they mention the classified Tacticians, and then again as they talk about the classified Alpha Bridge. He seems to be the guy who just ran into the flame turret and sat there, then called skill builds OP.
For example, tacticians.
Yes.
Yes.
Get to play with that.
It's very fun. Like where you kind of get this rhythm to your skills now, where you're playing this awesome caster role and you're building your buffs, getting this skill rotation. Super fun. There's going to be lots of interesting skill combinations that people come up with there. And then also Alpha Bridge is available now.
That's pure insanity.
It's pure insanity.
Let's take a moment just to say it is pure insanity. Alpha Bridge is pure insanity. And you know what?
And super fun.
Yeah,
Moving into the current game, we clearly understand that the devs did not want or intend to allow skills equal footing with pure gun builds. Look at the skill mod system. Look at utility mods compared to offensive mods. Look at the damage talents for skills versus damage talents for guns. The game even makes skill power 100% useless until level 10. Even then is not until endgame that you might actually find skill mods that are even slightly useful to your build. Frederick made it clear they saw skill builds in Division 1 as degenerate. I apologize ahead of time for the poor video encoding.
Whereas now we know what the highest damage any skill mod can roll, so we know how high the damage can get on any given skill. And that gives us a little bit of a control on making sure that you don't get those degenerate builds, right? We're listening to the feedback. We understand that it might not feel good, and if push comes to shove, we'll revisit the system at some point. But this is what we're launching with. This is what we believe in currently. And as always, it's going to be a dialogue with the players, right?
Well, let's have that dialogue, Freddy. The mod system, but specifically skill mods, is a looting nightmare, a hoarding hell, and boring. The thing I find odd is that in the next clip, he honestly hopes that these new systems make the game as good an RPG as the first game, which, considering that group roles in this game are almost non-existent, it seems rather silly. Healer roles are not needed because of strong enough self-healing. Damage skills are left by the roadside because they just scale poorly with high-tier content. Team buff builds have been removed from skills and are now the sole role of gear sets or specialization bonuses, and talents for DPS builds just plain function better and are actually user-friendly.
But as always, our goal is that this is as deep, as interesting as Division 1 was, and has a rich RPG and a rich loot depth to it. So we're very wary of that.
I hope you think your work is going to be good.
I don't want to harp on about the same issues many of us have already identified in the game. I want to look at what could be done to salvage the current system and make it feel rewarding for skill builds. By that I mean actually seeing a clan in PvP having 1 or 2 skill builds, or being able to random matchmake as a skill build and not wondering if I'm going to be booted, or if I should boot most skill users. The mod system just doesn't provide the benefits needed currently. The bonuses are so limited that even with max skill power, none of your skills actually feel good compared to the base skill power. The only real build that works in PvE is max explosive cooldown cluster seekers with a turret. The chem launcher radius nerf was 100% unnecessary and basically killed those builds. Plus, what was the whole point of making a choice-driven skill system when the choices are so boring? Was a rework of the entire system really needed if all you intended to do was offer pedestrian choices like damage and cooldown? Best in slots anyway? The system needs to be given some spice and brought back to life. Mods need to feel strong and unique to your build. They also need to remove the intense clutter that is happening because of the poorly designed system. I don't want to hold 30 mods for my DPS build and 30 more for my tank build, then adding another 120 for my main skill build, explosive skill build, hybrid build or my cooldown DPS build, plus however many armor mods to get things like healing, various resistances, specific weapon damage, extra skill power, armor, health, or currently useless status effect mods. I feel like the whole intention behind updating the system was to add more variety to the use of the skills. Yet the only combo that feels okay in PvE is the same Seeker turret spam from the first game. None of the manual skills provide enough reasons or competitiveness to be worth using. The mortar turret seemed like a great anti-sniper pick, yet it does so little damage you can waste all your ammo on a single purple sniper and still not kill it. The bomb drone is almost unusable unless 2 to 3 levels above the fighting. The flame turret works alright in narrow PvE areas, but flank-loving enemies, wide open spaces, and even bad PvPers make it near useless any other time. Not to mention the other skills that seem to prove the devs learned nothing from the first game. By that I mean, the first game had a real problem with non-skill builds spamming shock turrets that did the exact same thing as a full skill build. This game gave DPS players the defender drone, the shield, and any healing skill full use, which are only marginally better when buffed by skill power. Rewarding non-skill power users effective skills does little to inspire diversity, and any nerfs to skills because of this system is not going to only affect DPS players. Defender drones, chem heals, and anything else a DPS player can use to such success without any investment is just going to punish skill builds even further when given more general nerfs. So let's look at how we can fix the main problems of mod effectiveness, mod diversity, and mod clutter in some ways that could actually make skills fun to use. Basically, the intention is to make all mod rarity levels have a purpose, much like we see with the armor mods. But this will also limit the mod clutter by avoiding the need for a serious builder to collect 10 or more of a single mod just because of differing skill power requirements. The mods would be broken down in their individual aspects and allow for real specialization while keeping greens just as viable as high-ends, depending on the need. Starting with standard mods, we would have the main stats that most skills depend on for their base function. This would include things like damage, healing, health, and duration. In general, they would have the highest single stat roll, but not offer the utility or diversity of builds that other mods would. So if you wanted a strong shield but cared little for regen and cooldown, you can invest heavily into these types of mods. As an example, we have here a Seeker damage mod. The mod could offer something like 2% damage per 50 skill power. Now these are just easy to understand examples, so don't go crazy thinking I want OP skills. I will cover how to fight that at the end. I just understand that skills are extremely weak right now. So they do need some buff, but they also need more choice. This is just the first tier of that choice. Going on to specialized mods, I want to bring out the more customized feel of how skills perform. Giving that chem launcher a bigger radius, allowing your flame turret to shoot a little further. Basically, all the stats that make a skill build feel better to use, without making them point for point stronger than a base skill. This time we see the Seeker getting a buff to radius, so that we can hit more targets in a group, and gaining some speed so that it is able to actually reach targets quicker. It is not just damage that matters for Seekers, so being able to spec into functional aspects of skills makes them play better. One shots can be fun, but missing the target over and over because they got away is not. So while a high damage Seeker is great for cover hugging targets, they are not so good for moving ones. This allows you that customization to suit your needs. With superior mods, I wanted to make them the more all-around mod for players that might want a bit more of everything. So you can roll smaller amounts of the standard bonuses and smaller amounts of the specialized bonuses. However, since this is the next upgrade, I thought to add a little more variety with minor rolls. This could include things like gaining increased weapon damage while one skill is on cooldown, or if shooting the same target as your turret, you do increased damage. Again, I used the Humble Seeker as an example. This one, however, is designed around the healer build. You have the standard healing bonus and the specialized reduction duration bonuses, but you also allow the heal cloud to have an increasing chance of preventing status effects while healing. Maybe not the best healing mod, but it offers something unique that could make it worth running depending on the content. High ends seem to be the go-to for almost any build, but I wanted to make them less best in slots and more build-specific enhancements. So instead of having a large radius chem launcher, you make it a more direct fire shot. This could allow you to hit an ally with the chem heal, and it stays on them as they move. Or makes the fire starter into something akin to napalm, allowing for much more focused single target damage. This allows skills to function more as you want them to, and increases the user experience. Okay, it was just easier to make one picture and change the colors. Either way, I like Seekers, so in this example, we see that much like the weapon mods, we have a fair bit of negative stats happening. By losing some damage, cooldown, and radius, we gain the ability to throw more than one Seeker. This would work well with players that hate the throw, wait, throw approach to the current 10-second Seeker builds. This would allow you to toss out a bunch of weaker bombs, and then be able to focus on gunplay for a longer period while your Seekers come back, and not pressing you to time perfect Seeker throws every single fight. Finally, I want to cover what could make skills the most fun yet: exotic mods. Unlike the other mods, these apply new and more radical changes to the way skills function. Some could completely change the skill's automated behavior, others might bring back features we love from the first game. Like the high ends, these are not designed to be just pure stat bumps. They would offer altered skill performance that any build could use, but increased returns for skill builds. So let's look at what I see a pulse mod could be. The feature provided to anyone is that it applies concealed to the user, but above 1,000 skill power, prevents skills like turrets or seekers from auto-targeting the user. At 2,000 skill power, it gains a little bit of a classic twist and gives all allies a boost to all damage caused to pulse targets. And yet another seeker. But this mod brings back the classic cluster bleed that we love. It reduces the base damage to make it even, but could provide a good amount of versatility to DPS builds who use damage bonuses to status-affected enemies, but also increases bleed damage for high skill power builds. Lastly, we have the final measure drone, which basically is as it sounds. It is your personal bomb disposal service. So it no longer targets AI directly, but becomes a highly defensive skill for you or your group. Skill power makes the drone just that much better against incoming bombs. With so many RC cars and suicide drones, having a skill like this could really help certain people. Now, I fully understand the odds of any of these changes actually making it into the game are pretty much zero. But in such a system, how would OP skills be prevented? Two options are to limit the mods used by type, or add power caps to each specific mod. Although I'm not a big fan of the hard caps like we have now, so I would lean more into lowering the base stats and require skill power to have useful skills. High-end and exotics already help limit raw power by basically adding more function. The devs could also add increasing requirements to each level of a skill buff, so that at higher skill power, each increase might be double or more the base requirement. Either way, there are many ways to prevent one meta build, and having 5 meta skill builds versus 3 meta DPS builds sounds acceptable to me, because as of now, we have 3 meta DPS builds and 0 meta skill builds. The point of all this is to hopefully wake the devs up to why the system is just bad. Nerfing or buffing base skills alone will only allow DPS players more advantage over skill builds, not less. Plus, the upcoming update is going to hurt skill builds even more by boosting the armor and health rolls players can have, just like the stamina buff from the first division. Investing in skills needs to be uniquely rewarding and specialized. It should not basically be a shock turret does the same thing at the same range, only with less health and longer cooldown. Fully buffing a flame turret should provide a new feature, longer burn time, higher burn damage, increased range and effect area. Chem Launcher Cloud should be able to have large radiuses, or smaller, more deadly over time effects, when heavily invested into. We lose so much damage and effectiveness by selecting skill options. But gain what? A foot of extra radius? 30% damage of a base 7,000 damage turret? We have no multiplicative combo stacking like guns have, with weapon damage, crit damage, headshot damage, armor damage, health damage, out of cover damage, and damage to elites. We have 1 or 2 talents that might give us a little bit of extra base damage. Only a few skills are allowed to benefit from explosive damage. After that, all we have are 2 boring mod slots that might have a damage mod, since it seems like only a select few slots actually support damage mods. I can understand the desire to make skills more skillful and less cheap, but the current system isn't working. Give us better tools to use. Don't just sit around thinking everything is fine and then cancel year 2 plans like the first game did because the game was a hot mess and 90% of your players went poof. If you're a fellow skill build or believe in this cause, help this message by commenting below, hitting that like button, and subscribing, because the more activity this video gets, the more people will see it on YouTube. Remember, if we don't fight for it and get the devs' attention, they are obviously not going to change it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.